Greetings, everybody. It's Rob from the Sage Tower, and we are here with a new interesting video to discuss. And this one is going to be a movie review. We're going to be discussing Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the movie that has been released in theaters this year. Now, the reason I wanted to discuss this movie was, even though I don't do movie reviews on this channel or in terms of content that I produce here, since it is a Dungeons and Dragons movie, this is a tabletop based channel, it kind of fit to talk a bit about it. So the way I'm going to discuss this is I'm going to start off with a bit of a non-spoiler section for those who haven't seen the movie. I'm not going to go too much into details, just the general, like, if you saw the trailer, stuff like that you may have picked up. Then I'll go into a more deeper spoiler-based review. That one will have spoilers. It will have good, bad, ugly parts, what I liked, what I didn't like, and so forth. So with that, let us hop in and let's discuss the kind of non-spoiler version of this and what I thought about this movie. And I will say, the movie actually was pretty good. It actually was a decent movie. I have to give it credit. It's one thing that's good about this movie is it can cover both bases. So if you are someone who is not into tabletop, who doesn't know a lick about Dungeons and Dragons lore, you can enjoy this movie. It's got fantasy elements, it's got story, it's got all that. If you are a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, there's enough name drops, lore drops, that it makes you go, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know what that is. I know what that is. But it doesn't hit you over the head with lore, which makes it so that those who don't know the content aren't lost and kind of like confused by everything that is going on. So that's good in that front. The action scenes are actually pretty good for the most part. I will criticize some of them in the spoiler section, but overall the magic looks pretty good. Special effects look relatively good, and the scenes were actually quite good. They weren't cheesy, they weren't corny, there wasn't anything over the top with some of them, and even the storyline was an okay storyline. It was a believable enough kind of storyline that could, in a way, be like a classic either campaign or classic fantasy movie type story. It's a decently chunky movie. It's over 2 hours long, which isn't bad. And I didn't feel like it ever really slowed down. There are some parts that are kind of like, this part maybe carried on for a little bit too long than it should have. But it's good. And I think what also is good about this is, because it is a Dungeons and Dragons movie, they can either go with a sequel with the same group, or they could just make another one in the same universe, along the Sword Coast, with a whole different party. Like, that's the great thing about this, is that because different campaigns have different groups, so it's very easy just to mix and match, pull people out, pull people in, and go that way. Some of the characters who maybe didn't get as much spotlight in this movie could get it in the next movie, and so forth. So there's definitely a place you can go with that. Now, with that, I think it's time we kind of hop a bit more into the spoiler section, because it's going to be hard to talk about some of the concepts, some of the good, bad, ugly parts of it, without going more into details of the actual movie itself. So again, spoilers if you have not seen the movie. We're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty from here on out. All right, so I'm going to start off going through some of the characters and the good and bad of the characters. I'm going to start off with Edgin, played by Chris Pine. I think he did a really good job playing Edgin. I was a bit like, I didn't know what to expect, but he hit the humor really. He was the comic relief of the movie. His jokes were funny. His antics were great. Overall, I think he captured that part really good. The part I do not like about his character is, I don't think he actually does anything in the entire movie. Like, he never fights anybody really. And in D&D, bards are spellcasters, so he technically could have been a spellcaster. They probably didn't make him a spellcaster because of Simon and Doric. But like, I don't think he actually defeats anybody in the entire movie, which is kind of disconcerting because they build him up in the beginning. You know, he's a harper, he's this kind of like adventurer, and to me, I found that cool because my first character in Dungeons & Dragons when I was a kid was a harper. I think it was a half-elf ranger harper, and like, it just seemed like a really cool thing that they never really capitalized on that. So I would have liked him to have a bit more action, a bit more badassery than kind of let him just be the comic relief and let the others do all the kind of combat and stuff. So speaking of combat, we cannot say combat without Holger, Michelle Rodriguez, our barbarian in this party. I mean, I don't actually have a bad thing to say about this character. I think overall nailed the barbarian essence, spot on. The fight scenes were great. The action every time was amazing. I mean, only thing it would have been cool if she like said or did something that like indicated rage kind of moment. But other than that, like the pure, like where Edigan didn't have any action, Holger gave us all the action that we needed. So that was a good balance between the two of them, definitely. Speaking of action and the kind of battling and fighting, I talk a bit about it in the first part, and that is the kind of the special effects. The action scenes, the spells, a lot of the spells. If you play D&D, Pathfinder, whatever, you recognize the spells, and for the most part, all the spells look really good. I have to give them credit for that. Like they look good enough that you recognize the hands, you recognize all the different spell effects. The few things that I will comment on in terms of this is time stop. I wasn't really a fan of the bubble AoE that kind of comes out from time stop. It almost felt like you could run away from it, which they kind of do it in the opening, which I don't think time stop really does. I know that's not how it works, but like, to me, I feel like it should be like a, like it fully stops, not just slowly expands. But for dramatic purposes, I can understand why they chose that. As well as there's one scene when they're trying to sneak in, when Simon is creating an illusion of Edgin playing to distract the guards, and then he like loses his concentration and the illusion starts to like melt or deform. That looked kind of dumb, I'm not gonna lie. Like it like started to like melt, eyes were bulging. It was just like, it looked really, that part I was a bit cringe on, I'm not gonna lie. I looked at that spot and I was like, oh, that's, we didn't have to do that. I understand it was probably for like humor, but that to me was a miss. That I didn't think that was worth it. What I will say, speaking about effects and things that made me kind of go a bit like, ugh, was there's, I think, 2 or 3 scenes. I believe it's when they recruit Simon for and he accidentally hits the reverse gravity spell. Another time when Doric's escaping from the castle. The camera work sometimes goes wonky. Like they're trying to like capture like the chaoticness, like everyone's upside down, or they're capturing the angles of Doric as she's a hawk flying through the air, and the camera's like on the side, it's upside down, it's all over the place. That to me, I just personally was a bit messy to me. I felt like that we didn't need any of that. Like you could have toned it down by half, made it a more stable shot to kind of show it. Even just do a slight, like almost like a horizon lock, where the horizon kind of is in one place and the camera moves kind of deal. But it was just, I can understand for the reverse gravity, maybe to make it disorientating, but it kind of like the whole scene was almost shot that way that it just felt really same thing like with the Doric chase scene. That Doric chase scene kind of went on maybe a bit too long. Like I think she transformed between like 5 or 6 creatures throughout the entire wild shape. I don't think we needed all that just to get to the deer part for the joke, but that's fine. Since we're on the topic, we may as well discuss Doric herself as well. I have no complaints about Doric. I think, you know, it kind of works. She plays that druid well. The owlbear special effects was great. I think it was classic. Like it showed you, like, for D&D nerds who wanted to see an owlbear wreck somebody, you get that. Great, perfect. Wasn't clunky at all. Looked pretty smooth, to be honest. The other wild shapes were pretty fine, and I think she also captured that kind of, I don't want to say naiveness, kind of like almost like Achilles naiveness from Critical Role, where kind of like she's not, like, you can tell like she's not kind of, no, like, compared to someone like Edgin or Holger, who are like, you know, crooks and thieves, she's not really in that world, so she kind of doesn't get the same vibes that they get. But I think she does a great job. I can't really complain anything about her. I think her and Holger both have done relatively well. So we'll go to the other half, and we'll go to Simon. Now, Simon is our sorcerer, our wizard, if you will, spellcaster, and he does his job well. I think he provides a good amount of humor to kind of counterbalance Chris's humor as Edgin, and gives you the magic spells, gives you kind of that magic lore dump. So like when Mordecai's seal is mentioned, he's the one that talks about how to counter the spell. He kind of gives you all that magical like know-how in the group. Everything for him I think is relatively fine. The Helm of Disjunction attunement was interesting. They kind of like showed you kind of like almost a process for how to attune to an item, which is a lot more than I think most campaigns probably do. I think in most cases it's like, oh, if you just kind of like meditate and focus with the item for a day or an hour, it's attuned to you. But they show this kind of process of him fighting through his nerves and his own fears to attune to the item. And that was actually a cool concept for it. I will give credit for that. So what I will say, going from Simon, we're gonna go to Zinc. Rege-Jean Page plays Zinc, the paladin, if you will. And I have a good and bad for him, I have to say. Good because I think he does a really great job as Zinc. He has that kind of uptight, righteous attitude about himself the whole way through. Really kind of like, which helps carry over from his roles in like Bridgerton and stuff. That kind of like noble attitude around himself at all times. Even when he's explaining the bridge trap, you know, he's going through this massive, complicated like process to get past this bridge, and Simon just triggers the trap, which it happens in real campaigns. We all know that's going to happen. Where people say, oh, this is how you do the trap, and someone just steps across the trap line. But the part that I don't like about him is he just kind of leaves after Act 2. He comes in for Act 2, basically, if you depending on when you want to break it up, gives them the Helm of Disjunction after the quest, and then leaves. He does make an appearance at the end, yes, but like he doesn't stay for the fight or for anything. And I felt like that was a bit of a wasted opportunity, because he had that one fight scene against the assassins, which is kind of cool, but it would have been nice to see him at least, you know, maybe there was more assassins at the Coliseum he could have helped fight with. You know, just let him carry it through the end. Like, he's one of your bigger names, if you will, kind of on the cast list. At least, you know, pretty up and coming, kind of like, maybe not up and coming. I don't know his full IMDb profile, but in terms of like, you know, he had Bridgerton, so he got a lot of that hype from there, that I felt like he could have done more in the movie. Now that's our hero part. Let's talk about some of the other elements in the movie itself. So I'm going to start with Sophia, our villain. I think she did a pretty good job. The spells were fine, like the meteor swarm, the black tentacles, it all looked really, really powerful. The time stop, I talked about the effect, but it's always cool to see an actual time stop, even if it's in D&D or in cinematic, to see those kind of spells go off are really cool. She played a pretty good red wizard. Like, it was scary, it was intense, you know, nothing like through the whole movie she was just like intense and staring. I don't have much to say about that, really. I feel like the ending part was kind of like they could have potentially maybe kind of like not she would have known about the counterspell, but maybe not. Overall, I think she was a good enemy, like a good true enemy, even though I know we had Forge was kind of like the bad guy for most of it, but we all knew Sophia was really the bad guy. Like, once you got the history section, someone should have you probably put it together before the group did, that they were using the Colosseum for the ritual. Like, it made sense. That being said, I am going to hop on over to, I don't know if there's an actual thing for it. I don't know if there is, but it is for the dragon. And I don't know the name of the dragon. It starts with a T. Thembachard. There you go, Thembachard. It's a pudgy red dragon. This, I'm sorry, I do not like this dragon one bit, from head to toe. I understand it being a pudgy dragon, sure, fine, that makes sense. The whole scene went on for too long. Like, I felt like it was more comedic than scary, really. Like, it was chasing them, but it was kind of like, it wasn't even chasing them, it was just like sliding after them, and then climbing up onto a platform, and the platform would tilt, and they would just do all this stuff, and it's just, it was really weird. And then the fact that they escape by doing this, like, I think he does this like spark, and he like sets off the gas kind of from the dragon's breath attack, makes really no sense to how they got out. It just overall, the whole scene up until the dragon, that whole underdog scene was great. The assassins, the bridge trap, even the location looked really good. Post the whole dragon scene, I just felt like to me, I didn't like it. I felt like that dragon wasn't. It was more like a worm than a dragon, even though it kind of flew. I know dragons can be big and pudgy. I know that. I've seen art for them, but this one it felt more comedic than scary to me, personally. With that, talked about the characters. We talked about the dragon. Talked about the fight scenes. The lore for this movie is great. You know, they mentioned Icewind Dale. They mentioned Baldur's Gate. You're in Neverwinter. You know, it's all the classic locations that people know of. They don't go too much into it, like I mentioned previously, so that people who don't know about these aren't lost. And there's enough there that's good. The effects in terms of character and creature design is also really good for this one. The Dragonborns look great. I think it's Arakara. I call them Tengu because I think that's what Pathfinder calls them, but I think they call it Arakara. The bird people look really good. Like, they look good. The Dragonborn look good. The creatures all look spot on. The Displacer Beasts, Intellect Devourers, Mimics, all great effects. The Displacer Beasts actually looked amazing, and the effects for them was great. Like it's a classic enemy, and to see them used that way is nice. The Mimic, of course, always a classic, and it worked out pretty well. Like, even though we saw it in the trailer, it was nice to see it kind of in action again. Even that gelatinous cube was okay. I would have liked to see more scorch marks when they left the cube, to kind of show the acidity of the cube, because it is supposed to do the acid damage to them probably. But they did do a little like singeing sounds, but they didn't. I felt like they could have built it up a little bit more for the cube itself. Otherwise, everything except for the dragon, I felt like was pretty good. The dragon, I already talked about. It was a mess. Sorry, not sorry. The last thing I don't have much in terms of like things that I really went on. I already mentioned the dragon scene that I was a bit close on. The other one that I had to actually look up a bit was when Simon uses the Helm of Disjunction. He puts it on, activates it finally. It goes boom, and this blankets half the like area with its effect, knocking out like lights and stuff to disable the seal. I thought in theory, wouldn't it have knocked out his sending stone, so he couldn't actually use the sending stone to communicate to the party? Looking at it online, I believe it disjunctions everything that's not on the caster. So by that sense, I don't think his stone would be broken, but everyone else's stone would in theory be disjunctioned, I believe. Again, I don't the Helm of Disjunction isn't an item that I frequently use, but that part I was like, wait a minute. That's like the GM in me like going, wait a minute. I'm a bit confused by that bit. Now again, it's not a glaring issue. It's not TIE fighters hyper jumping through space. That's a reference to Rise of Skywalker, where I watched that movie and I was just like, TIE fighters don't have hyperdrive. They can't hyperjump once, more or less multiple times. Stop it. Like I was like, that's not how this works, you know. But it wasn't anything like that. But overall, it was a good movie. I have to give it credit. It was a pleasurable experience. I think it redeemed the 2000 version, which was like overly corny and just like, it was almost like the 2000 movie was kind of like the old Mortal Kombat movies, where they were over cheesy for the sake of being cheesy, because that was kind of like what the movies were back then. But this one was more, I would have this kind of stuff shows they could make shows about this stuff. I know they have Critical Role and Vox Machina, but like they can make more. They can make like Netflix shows, Prime shows, whatever, in this kind of context, and it would work really well. The movie has a good story. It's enjoyable. There's some romance in it that's not like the classic romance between the main leads. The action is good, as previously mentioned, as well as the story. It is somewhat predictable. I will say, like, there are some twists and turns, but like it got to a point where like if you watch enough of these kind of stories and stuff, you know in the end he's not going to use the tablet for his wife, he's going to use it for somebody else, kind of deal. So that was kind of an obvious moment there. But otherwise, it's a great movie. If you are a tabletop fan, I definitely recommend checking this movie out. It's a good watch. I was scared for it with all the drama around D&D and everything, that it may not, hit as good as I thought it would. But overall, I think it's a really good job, and I hope that it does well enough that they can warrant making additional films, additional stories from this, hopefully. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy this content as well as my tabletop content here on my channel. Thank you guys.